Hi, and welcome to the West Point Lake Update. I'm Steven Rector, Park Ranger with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We've got a great show planned for you today. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with our first guest. Hi, and welcome back. Our first guest today is Henry Jacobs. Henry is the outreach manager for the Chattahoochee Riverkeeper. Henry, I appreciate you being here today.
Oh man, always good to be here.
I have to start out with one of these stories that crops up every single year that seems to float around social media more than anywhere else, and that is they're always in the springtime. Seems to be someone bringing up E. coli water quality issues at West Point Lake. So could you tell us a little bit about kind of where those stories have originated from, but more importantly, based on the testing that you do all the time, what is the water quality at West Point Lake currently?
Oh yeah, West Point Lake and the Chattahoochee River are healthy overall these days. I think that's kind of the key message. But at the same time, you have small events, occurrences, especially large rain events. That tend to bacteria levels rise for a small kind of window of time right after a big rainstorm. The water, maybe it has a more muddy look to it, especially in the river. If the river is high and muddy, you can pretty much assume that bacteria levels have increased. Now to a point that is very dangerous, that's hard to say. So working for Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, we have a program called Neighborhood Water Watch, and we give citizens the tools they need to collect water samples, and then they bring those to our lab either in LaGrange, where I work. We have an office in Atlanta, and then Gainesville up in the headwaters. But folks bring water samples in, and we can tell you through the tests whether bacteria levels are at safe levels or unsafe. And what we've seen recently, and I know, there's been some Facebook posts, and I think sometimes it can be, the title maybe of the post can be a little misleading. But really what we find is when you get a big rain event, like I know in the last couple weeks we've had some just downpours, just within a couple hours, a lot of water coming down. And that's a lot of stuff's flowing into storm drains and into creeks and then into the river, and bacteria levels do go up. But almost in every instance, we've seen bacteria levels go back down within 18 to 24 hours.
Now, when people hear that the bacteria levels go up, though, that is primarily natural bacteria. That is not factory discharge for the most part, is it? I mean, that's deer and turkeys and geese and dogs and things like that, right? That are,
for the most part,
waste products are washing off of the shoreline into the water. I'm trying to come up with a polite way of saying that.
Yeah. Sometimes there's no easy way, and it's I find it just kind of interesting because I'm an instructor. Part of the week we have a floating classroom on West Point Lake. I know we've talked about that before, but we have kids out, and in order to educate them about being aware when you go to the lake. It is a natural environment, so you have lots of animals, different factors. But in general, yes, when you talk about E. coli and bacteria in the water, the majority, especially on West Point Lake, is coming from natural things around the lake, whether it's wildlife. But then if you think about the Chattahoochee River, which flows into West Point Lake, informs it. You have to think about all the towns, communities that live along the Chattahoochee and the creeks and in the watershed. And you have to be aware that in a lot of towns that have been around for many years, you have some old pipes that might be leaking, septic tanks that might be old, need to be fixed or repaired. And this is very small occurrences.
But that's because the Riverkeeper organization has worked very, very hard at identifying those locations.
Exactly.
Over the past, what, decade, 20 years?
For the last 22 years, Chattahoochee Riverkeeper has been working, especially in Atlanta. And Atlanta being 75 miles upstream of West Point Lake, it definitely has had an impact and continues. I would say that in the last decade, it's been a positive impact. A healthier, much healthier river and a much healthier West Point Lake, because Atlanta spent almost $2 billion in the last 2 decades to fix water treatment plants, their sewer system, in part from a lawsuit because filed by Riverkeeper, and some folks here in LaGrange helped us with that.
So long story short,
Yeah.
we have a very, very clean West Point Lake. Read your social media posts very, very carefully to see when those stories are originating from.
Very much so. And if anything, though, one takeaway is that people do care. And when they see these posts and, you have a reaction, West Point Lake is a great resource for us here in Troup County and really within the whole region. So the fact that people care, I think is great. But yes, wanting to be, well informed, but also you don't want misleading information, because I think we should take pride in West Point Lake, but it's good to keep watch.
So, just moving on to the next topic about people do care, and we have a wonderful resource. You've got a lot of programs that you're doing to help kind of introduce people that may not have access on a daily basis to a boat, to introduce them to West Point Lake and get them out there on the water. You recently had a wildlife tour. I've only got a couple of minutes here left, but if you could talk about the wildlife tour, and I think you have a couple music cruises coming up here shortly. What all is involved in that, and how people can get involved on those tours? Yeah,
real quick. It's the West Point Lake Floating Classroom, a boat we have on West Point Lake at Highland Marina. Can fit up to 40 passengers on it, usually during the week. We're taking school groups. We get support from our Riverkeeper members as well as donors and funders to take a lot of these underserved kids on the boat through scholarships. But then on the weekends, recently we had a wildlife cruise, had some folks from the Corps of Engineers from DNR join us for that, and had a full boat and had a great 2-hour program. Springtime right now, all the osprey are on the nest. You have lots of birds, wildlife to see on the lake, which I think shows that West Point Lake is in a healthy state these days. But then, coming up in May, in June, and I'll have to, maybe you can visit our website at chattahoochee.org for the specific dates, because I can't remember them.
That's perfectly okay. But chattahoochee.org, and they're going to be music cruises.
We've got a jazz cruise and then a blues cruise with a young blues musician from Greenville, Georgia.
This sounds awesome. Henry, I do appreciate your time today. Delicate topic to start off with, so I appreciate you kind of hopefully squaring that away for our viewers and taking time out of your day to be here. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you.
And stay tuned. We'll be right back with our next guest, Ranger First Class Russell Epps.
What do you know about operating a boat? Hi, this is Sergeant Jim Bradfield with DNR Law Enforcement in Troup County. Have you heard of the 100-foot law? What is the minimum age of a boat operator? Can you drink alcohol on a boat? Take a boater education course and you'll know the answer to these questions and a lot more. Also remember that anyone born after January the 1st, 1998 must take an approved course to operate a boat on Georgia waters. Information on classroom, online, and home study courses is available at gadnrle.org.
Hi, and welcome back. I have with me now Ranger First Class Russell Epps with the Georgia Department of Natural Resources Law Enforcement Division. Russell, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
We kind of got a little bit of short notice there. Sorry about the communication that we didn't have in advance. But I wanted to ask you on today just to talk about it's that time of year. Water safety is going to start becoming, it's always important, but we end up having a lot more boats on the water in the spring and summer. And I know you're out there quite a bit. I just wanted to kind of go through what are some of the probably most common violations you find out here on the water at West Point Lake?
Absolutely. Probably our most common violation, one that I see a lot that's really important, is underage without a life jacket. You know, Georgia law requires that if you're 12 years and under, while you're on board an operated vessel, that you've got to have a life jacket on snap, fully fastened, of proper size and fit. And so we see a lot of kids that are, like say 12 and under, that are not wearing life jackets while they're on the boat, and that's one we really highly enforce and we really stress it. The life jacket violations, not having enough on the boat, not having the right size and fit is probably one of our bigger violations that we see. Rules of the road, violation of these no-wake zones at a bridge is something that we're pretty focused on enforcing. Of course, the BUI, boating under the influence stuff, we're strong on that. And if you want me to talk about that a little bit, I can. As far as boating under the influence, it mirrors Georgia state law just like the highway. It's the same. 0.08 is per se for being under the influence on a boat, just like it would be in a car. It's the same thing. You can't operate a vessel on the waters of the state under the influence of an alcohol or drug. So we focus on that. Just like the State Patrol focuses on the highway, so we will be out there looking.
There seems to still be a little bit of confusion about that .08 on a boat and in the car, even though that law was changed, was that 2 or 3 years ago now?
2 years.
2 years ago, and so there still seems to be a little bit of confusion. Yeah. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I want to go back to the no-wake zones very quickly. We frequently, the Corps of Engineers, Rangers that are working on the lake frequently get calls about the no-wake zones and about people who are driving too close to the shoreline, not going no-wake. All the bridges at West Point Lake are marked with no-wake buoys. They are no-wake zones.
That's right.
Can you talk real quickly about kind of the significance of the no-wake zone, and is the operator responsible for their wake?
Absolutely. The operator is very much responsible for their wake. Those no-wake zones are put there for a reason. I mean, it's because a lot of these bridges have blind points where you can't see oncoming traffic. You got people tied up under the bridges that are fishing, and so when you're putting wakes, I mean, you're just doing damage to other people's property, possibly life, limb, that type thing. So yeah, the no-wake zones are there for safety reasons, but you are very much responsible for your own wake. And there's places, the 100-foot rule is a pretty common rule that we go by. It's 100 foot from any pier, piling, bridge, dock, person swimming in the water, boat anchored, all of that stuff. So you got to be at idle speed or less when you're within that 100 feet of those objects in the water.
That's the reason I brought up that responsible for your own wake thing is I frequently talk to boaters who have gotten too close to the shoreline or another swimmer, or have gotten too close to a dock and started to kind of rock boats and beat them against the dock. And when I start to talk to them about, you are responsible for the wake your boat causes, and if that causes damage to this other boat over here, you could be held responsible for that.
Absolutely.
And they seem to be flabbergasted by that it's just, I had no idea that was even possible. Yeah,
I would say very much so. I mean, you're responsible for anything. It's your boat, it's your vehicle, your vessel. So yeah, you're definitely responsible for any action that it causes. The operator's responsible for it. Absolutely.
And I also wanted to, we have, our next guest is going to be from the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and they actually teach the Georgia Department of Natural Resources boating safety course. So I just wanted to real quickly have you cover, and this I think was the same time as the boating under the influence laws, but just real quickly go over the boater safety education law. I think it was mandatory boater education safety law.
It is. If you were born on or before January 1st, 1998, then you have to take that boater safety course to operate a vessel on the waters of the state. And the Coast Guard Auxiliary is kind enough to teach it here in the county. And for West Point Lake, a lot of our Rangers teach it around the state. But you've got to have it, like I say, from January 1st, 1998, born on or after, you've got to have it. And it's a nice program, because we get a lot of new boaters on the lake, a lot of people that have never been on a boat, people that have been on a boat a long time ago and they just forget things. So it's really good to get that educational requirement, get that fresh in their mind before they come out on the lake. Absolutely.
So Russell, we're real close to being out of time, but I sincerely appreciate you coming in today. I think that was some great information. Always wear your life jacket, but Georgia law is 12 and under while the boat's in motion.
That's right.
The other thing we talked about was 0.08 for both the road and on the water is the legal limit for boating under the influence, boating while intoxicated, and then the mandatory boater safety education law. And keep in mind those no-wake zones too, guys. We are all very serious about those no-wake zones.
Yep.
The Georgia Department of Natural Resources Law Enforcement Division, the Corps of Engineers, the Coast Guard Auxiliary, the Sheriff's Department boats that are out there, we are all very, very serious about these no-wake zones and making sure that people are being safe out there.
Absolutely. Something else comes to mind that I didn't think about as far as jet skis, personal watercraft. Georgia law requires that if you're going to tow a skier on a personal watercraft, you've got to have an observer. It's got to be a 3-person personal watercraft, and you've got to have an observer. Your mirrors do not count by Georgia law. I think Alabama they do, so there's some confusion there. Yes. But Georgia law, you've got to have an observer, a competent observer. So that's something that a lot of people get confused, and I run into that every year where I'll have somebody not with an observer on board.
Yeah, that's a valid point. And we do have waters in both Georgia and Alabama. So we will frequently have some things that aren't quite directly in line with Georgia and Alabama. And that jet ski and observer versus mirrors rule is one of those that's probably the most frequently that we run into, the frequently violated one.
Yeah, I see it pretty regular. And it's a safety thing for us. If you need to be, as a jet ski or personal watercraft operator, focusing on operation of that vessel, not what's behind you. So that's why we require that observer, and the mirrors don't count. Okay. The mirrors are a small window. So
perfect. I appreciate your time today.
Yes, sir.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break.
Nobody wants to be stopped by a law enforcement officer.
Everyone wants to feel safe.
So we've trained our officers to first listen and then explain.
We ask if you have contact with one of our officers, you listen, give him an opportunity to explain, comply with his requests, and if there's a problem, contact us so that we can investigate your complaint.
Listen, explain, comply, then complain.
Our safety and yours matters.
Hi, and welcome back. Joining me now is Bill Clerk. Mr. Clerk here is a flotilla staff officer with the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary. Flotilla staff officer in charge of member training.
That's correct.
Bill, I appreciate your time today. I asked you to be on today's show because this time of year, water safety is always very, very important to both the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, to the Coast Guard Auxiliary, and to the Corps of Engineers. And we just heard from Ranger First Class Epps about the mandatory boating safety law. Mandatory boater safety education law for any person born after January 1st, 1998. And the Coast Guard Auxiliary has been very kind over a number of years to offer those courses at the West Point Project office. So could you tell us about those courses, when they're going to be, what all different topics you guys cover, and how people can get registered to participate?
Well, the courses for the next 3 months are held on the second Saturday of the month, and that's May 13th, June 10th, and July 8th. It's an 8-hour course. It's held at the Corps of Engineers Recreation and Visitor Center on West Point Lake. We hold the course there. It covers all the requirements for boater education. Persons 12 years and older will be certified. The certification will be validated by the state of Georgia, and also for those persons who are residents of Alabama. The information is forwarded to the state of Alabama and will be recorded on their driver's license, because in Georgia we have a separate card. In Alabama, it's on your driver's license. The course includes rules of the road, boating safety, preparing your boat to go on the water, water sports, dangers on the water, just the full set of things that you need to know if you're going to operate safely. And as with everything else, we put a lot of emphasis on safety. As the last speaker did, we are concerned about no wake zones, and also we really put a lot of emphasis on wearing your life preservers or personal flotation devices. It's very important. It's legal for under the age of 12 while the boat's in motion, but we really encourage everybody to wear their personal flotation device at all times.
So I know that's one of those things where we get a lot of questions, and a lot of times the answer is, this is what the state law says, but we would really prefer, and the life jacket law is one of those where the state of Georgia says that if the boat is in motion, anybody 12 and under has got to wear their life jacket. But I know a lot of times, and I say it in these classes too, our preference from the perspective of the Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard Auxiliary is that everyone wears their life jacket at all times, not just 12 years of age and under while the boat's in motion. We want everybody to have their life jacket on.
Right, and if you're out on the lake and you see Coast Guard on patrol, or you see the Corps of Engineers or the DNR, you'll see that those individuals on those patrols are wearing their life jackets all the time while they're on the water. That's
a very valid point. And the park rangers, the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, the Sheriff's Department, Troup County Sheriff's Department has a boat, the Coast Guard Auxiliary has a boat. You know, these are folks that are out on the water and are very experienced boaters, very experienced individuals on the water, and they're still wearing their life jackets at all times. In fact, I put my life jacket on before I step onto the walkway to go to the courtesy dock, because I understand that anytime you're around the water, you need to have your life jacket on, because you could slip off the courtesy dock into the water.
And that's one thing to emphasize. We've talked about all these government agencies, and with the exception of the Coast Guard, all these agencies are law enforcement. They can give you a ticket. The Coast Guard is there just to ensure safety. The actual Coast Guard is law enforcement, but the Coast Guard Auxiliary is just to facilitate and assist boaters and ensure a safe boating experience, not to enforce the law.
Now that brings up one of the things I wanted to discuss with you today. The Coast Guard Auxiliary does a tremendous amount of education and safety checks throughout the year. So can you just talk about your education program, not just with the boating safety education, but educating your members, educating the public, and performing vessel safety exams?
One of the main things that we do, as in addition to the safety courses, is we have vessel safety checks, because each vessel is not only required to have people that are proper operators, but there's also certain equipment that's required by both the state and the federal government, including sound-making devices, flares, a throwable device in case somebody goes in the water. And so we perform safety checks at the ramp or at an individual's home to make sure they have all that equipment, to discuss it with them. And we give them a decal when they've completed that, and that decal may reduce their insurance on their boat if they have the boat insured. We also have at all the retail stores in the area places where we can put out pamphlets and material on boating safety. And for our members, we train the members to the same degree that the Coast Guard is operationally trained. We carry the same equipment, whether we're on the coast or on the lake. We have boat crew training and coxswain training. We have boats that are owned by the members, but are used as facilities, and when they're out on the lake and are marked for patrol, they are under the rules of the government, and we have the same protection as if it was a government vessel.
So I know right now that we are, the Coast Guard Auxiliary and the Corps of Engineers, we're coordinating, I think, 5 separate opportunities for the Corps of Engineers and the Coast Guard Auxiliary to work together on a single boat. And then we are in the process of working up specific requests to have your boats out in addition to ours on the 4th of July and Memorial Day. Possibly Labor Day, we've not determined that just yet, but there's a lot of opportunities in 2017 for the Coast Guard Auxiliary members to get out on the water and participate in these water safety activities.
That's one of the main things that people join the Coast Guard Auxiliary for. We probably have 5 dates right now starting on May 5th that our members who are interested in becoming crew members or coxswains, that's the operator of the boat, can take that training. And so those courses are going on, and that time's probably a day at a time, 5 times, to go through the requirements for those certifications.
Bill, we are just about out of time for today. I appreciate you being here today. Before we wrap up, though, very, very quickly, could you let our viewers know how folks can become involved with the Coast Guard Auxiliary?
Yes. If you'll go on the web to Coast Guard Auxiliary, you'll see the website, and it'll let you know where the Coast Guard is and where the nearest flotilla is. We meet on the 3rd Saturday of each month. During the summer months, when the Corps Visitor Center is open, we meet at the Corps Visitor Center, and we meet here in LaGrange during the winter months when the Visitor Center is not open on Saturday. And so we encourage everybody who's interested in providing opportunity to assist other folks on the water and provide more involvement in the boating safety to join us for the fellowship and the training.
Bill, I appreciate all that information. I appreciate your time today. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break.
Hello, I'm Susan Cromer, Park Ranger with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at West Point Lake, reminding you that life jackets save lives. Life jacket loaner stations are located at our campground and beach area gatehouses around the lake. These life jackets are available for you and your family to use at no cost. Please take advantage of this free program and keep a close eye on your children while enjoying yourself at West Point Lake. For more information, please call 706-645-2937.
Hi, and welcome back. I want to thank all of our guests for being on the show today. Water safety is very important to all of our guests. If at all possible, please plan to attend one of our free boater safety education courses. You can register for those boater safety education courses at www.gooutdoorsgeorgia.com. And for more information on these stories and more, like us on our official Facebook page, facebook.com/westpointlake.usace.
When boating this summer, remember 3 things. We call them the Big 3. Hi, this is Sergeant Jim Bradfield with DNR Law Enforcement in Troup County. Number 1, wear your life jacket. You can't grab a stowed life jacket if you're ejected during an accident. Number 2, obey and follow navigation rules. On the water, there are rules of the road. Know them and follow them. And number 3, don't drink in boat. A couple of drinks could ruin your life forever. Remember the Big 3 and boat safe. Go to gadnrle.org and click on Boating for more information.